No.
No, oh, that got moved too.
That's public safety, sorry. Yeah.
What was the other date?
Before we all leave today, I would love for, let's just talk.
Yep, let's figure it out.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
I'd like to call the regular city council meeting for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone, and welcome those that are watching. Is there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No, sir.
Seeing none, I'll move the approval of the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. First item up is presentations, proclamations, and acknowledgments. The first is our 2022 Management and Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Ms. Malika, our Finance Director.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We're here this evening with our annual audit. Once again, each year the city's financial statements are audited by an independent public accounting firm. MMKR completed our 22 audit this year. The goal is to provide reasonable assurance that the city's financial statements are free of material misstatement. Based upon their audit, they concluded there was reasonable basis for rendering an unmodified opinion. The city's statements are fairly presented in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. Aaron Nielsen, a partner with MMKR, is here this evening to provide more information regarding the audit. So Aaron, I will turn it over to you. As soon as I can figure it.
Looks good, you got it. There
There.
it is.
That's what I was trying to do.
Thank you. Well, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening to present the results of our audit for this past year. We have 3 documents in the packets for you this evening: the financial statements, the special purpose reports, and the management reports. So your financial statement is prepared to allow you to submit it to the Government Financial Officers Association for their Certificate of Excellence that you did receive for your audit for the year ended December 31st, 2021, and we believe you have prepared it to allow you to get the award again for 2022. So you will be submitting it for the purpose of obtaining the award again, and we'll see what the results are with that completion of that review. As I mentioned, we've also issued our special purpose reports that gives us the results of our audit testing and compliance and internal controls. And then we have the management report, which we use to provide the summary of our audit and facilitate the presentation tonight. So we do have a PowerPoint that I'm using really to keep the camera off my face and keep us on the same page as I go through the materials for the financial statements. And so I'll make my way through the presentation, and then if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. So with that, as mentioned, we are independent auditors. Our role to provide that opinion on the financial statements, also to issue our reports on internal control and compliance. So we have the financial statement audit, as well as in the Office of the State Auditor's Minnesota Legal Compliance Manual. And I'll get right to our audit results. As previously mentioned, we have issued what is known as an unmodified or a clean opinion on the basic financial statements. So exactly what you're looking for, that those financial statements are fairly stated as of December 31st, 2022, and the results of operations for the year then ended. You'll notice there are some changes within the report this year. You were required to implement a new Governmental Accounting Standard Board statement with GASB 87 this year, and changes in how leases are reporting and incorporating that into your financial statements. With regard to the internal control and compliance for the financial statement audit, and we've noted it's within the special purpose report document, we're pleased to report we had no material weaknesses or instances of non-compliance with our testing this past year. Ongoing with that theme for the Minnesota Legal Compliance Manual, there's 7 broad categories that we test, with many individual tests within inside of that, and we're pleased to report we have just one comment within statutes, you're required to have some subcontractor language and payment to subcontractors be included in the original agreements or the signed contracts. And for one of the contracts we tested, that language was missing in the contract. It's really just standard language, just making sure it's incorporated in the document. So we had just the one comment this year with legal compliance testing. As I move through the rest of the slides, we try to share some of the financial results, comparisons to prior years. I'll start with looking at the governmental funds. So I'm not including your utility operations or business type operations as they're referred to. We've got your governmental funds, so it's capturing the general fund, capital project fund, debt service fund, special revenue funds. As you can see, when we do a comparison to prior year, there was an overall increase of about $3.8 million this past year on a fund-based, governmental fund-based modified accrual presentation. That is broken down on the table we have before you by the components of fund balance, non-spendable, restricted, assigned. And you can see the largest change was in that assigned category because the change was largely in your capital project funds, and those fund balances have to be assigned for the purpose of that capital project fund. My next few slides look at the general fund financial position. So the general fund is the primary operating fund for the city. When we look at the general fund financial position for the past 5 years, you can see we've provided a fund balance, a cash balance, and then the revenues as the size of the operation. To provide that gauge, you can see the city has had a stable financial position over all of the 5 years we presented here. You can see there's been a couple of blips and increases in the revenue reported in 2020 and in 2022, and really that is presenting the use and availability of some one-time federal funds that came through related to the coronavirus pandemic. Another slide on the general fund revenues, so diving in a little deeper, showing that breakdown of the total revenues for this past year. Revenues for your general fund amounted to about $18.4 million in 2022, coming in over budget, an increase over the prior year as a previous graph also provided. And you can see it's largely in that intergovernmental category for the federal resources this past year. I kind of overlooked it, or I did overlook it with my previous comments on compliance with those federal funds this year. You were also subject to an additional requirement testing compliance engagement that the federal government allowed. We did also complete that testing with the audit this year, and pleased to report there were no comments or requirements that we had to report with regard to that additional testing for that additional engagement in 2022. The other component I share with this slide often is you can see the primary sources of your general fund revenue, so the reliance of property taxes to finance the expenditures of the general fund. So you can see property taxes by far making up the majority of the revenues in the general fund. And then I believe it's my last slide for the general fund, looking at the expenditures. So similar to expenses, but we're only capturing current expenditures. So expenses, so we call them expenditures, with that modified accrual basis of accounting. So you can see the change from the prior year. In 2022, general fund spending amounted to about $15.7 million, coming in slightly or over budget, and then with an increase over the prior year, largely as anticipated. You can see again, we talk about and include the concentration in public safety spending for the general fund operation, which is common with what we see with other cities that we work with, the primary function of spending within the general fund operation. I have a slide for your enterprise fund. So this would capture your utility operations. You can see in the lower half, we look at the total fund balance, or I should say net position for enterprise funds. When we look at those by fund, water, sewer, stormwater, street light, and your arena utility or enterprise operations, you can see there was an overall increase of about $18.5 million in 2022. On the top half of the table, you can see that breakdown by net position components, so that net investment in capital assets. So it's capturing the infrastructure assets of the city and then offsetting those with any debt obligations that may exist or capital-related payables against the net investment and capital assets. So as you can see, enterprise operations tend to be very capital intensive and the focus of equity with that net investment and capital assets. A big component of the increase this past year with your city as a growing city is the developer contributions with expansion and growth in the city, additional streets and infrastructure that have been added to the city and donated or from developers as those developments have been completed. Another component of that is also the connection fees that are also involved in that process. And then I'll move pretty quickly here. There's more information and details within the financial statements as well as the management report. But as we look at the water fund over the past 5 years here, you can see that operation, the change in cash balance, net position, and operating revenues. I think I made a comment, the increase in consumption with the growing size of the community and rate adjustments contributing to that change in the overall operating revenues in 2022. The sewer fund, the graphs tend to look very similar because of the size and scale of the equity components or that net position. As I mentioned, all of these funds largely being capital intensive. As said, it's nearly the same for each one of these utility operations. Again, for the storm water fund, changes this past year like the previous two, capital heavy, significant capital contributions in 2022. The arena fund operates a little differently. This one I would say is not quite as capital intensive, but also in relation, you can see the net position, the change. You can see the dip in 2020 in revenues with the impact of the pandemic and returning back to kind of the pre-pandemic levels in the activity within the arena fund. And then my last slide that I've shared with you tonight here, and we kind of saved the toughest for last, I guess. I'm warming you up as we go through the presentation. So to this point, I've tried to stress the difference in the presentation, the dual perspective that the government reporting model provides you. For governmental funds, the focus is on current available resources and how you're able to use those funds to invest in the community or use them to provide those services. What that doesn't capture is the long-term perspective on the governmental funds. So we get that with the statement of net position, the entity-wide, where we consolidate all of the governmental funds and then incorporate the capital assets and the long-term obligations. So you'll notice I won't spend a lot of time talking about business type activities because the bottom half here shows that same $18.5 million increase because the utility funds are on that same basis of accounting. So utility funds are meant to run like a business and capture all the costs associated with those. So there is not any change for your city between the business type activities and the enterprise funds consolidated. The difference you can see when we talked about the increase in the governmental funds and then we compare it to the increase in governmental activities, total net position, you can see there was an increase of about $1.6 million this past year. The changes that we noted and accounted for with the audit this past year, that net investment in capital assets, capturing depreciation on your street infrastructure this past year, really that restricted category maintaining a similar level to the prior year, and then the unrestricted component seeing an increase this past year with some of the impact of the state pension plans as well as the changes for federal grants that you were able to capture and utilize this past year, accounting for the change in the unrestricted component. So with that, I know I went through a lot of information. I joked before there's about 120 pages in your annual comprehensive report that we could go through, but I'll leave that to you to go through the page by page, and if there's any comments, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you very much. Open up the floor to council. Any questions, comments? Where do you want to start?
No.
Oh, you financial.
First of all, the fact that TIA survived GASB 87, that's awesome. The equivalent on the private side, the ASC 842, the lease implementation, I literally know people that, I know a CFO who retired early because she didn't want to have to deal with the implementation of it. So you're still here, so that's awesome. I have no questions.
Hard to follow that one.
I was going to say, I'm not going to reference any code or statute, yeah.
No. Just one comment, I think, for our audience that are watching. You noted that there are some dollars that came through. There was a special audit on the government funds that we had received from the federal government. Those are kind of elevating ours, but we would expect to see those drop here over the next year or two as well. Correct?
I would agree. So the federal government would normally require a single audit with these federal dollars because there were so many, and so they did allow for alternative agreements, or I want to call it, they call it the ACE audit, examination of those funds. So that was completed this past year, and they've kind of streamlined the testing of that because there are many cities that don't require single audits. So they wanted to focus just on that grant, so it allowed an opportunity to provide that ACE audit. You completed that. We don't have any findings to report for that. We will submit that to the federal government. They'll have their opportunity also if they would want to dig further, but I wouldn't anticipate that given how many audits there are and federal funds they'd be going through, but it is always open. There's public documents, so. No, and we're pleased to report that. We do follow up on prior year findings. I think we had one comment last year. I noted in the management report, we're pleased we did not issue that finding again this year, so an important part of our process. How do you respond to comments when we give them? When do you take them seriously and react to them? And we're pleased that that finding was cleared. So.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Certainly appreciate the findings, the audit, and certainly appreciation to your staff, Ms. Malika, for everything that goes into it. How many staff you got doing this, helping you?
There are 6 besides myself,
Six besides.
but that
so-
also includes our utility staff, so.
Yeah, so
Yes.
certainly take back a well-founded thank you for the efforts that go into this from council.
Absolutely, thank you.
So with that, would someone like to entertain a motion to accept the 2022 financial reports?
Yeah, I can make a motion to accept the 2022 financial reports.
Second?
Motion by Tyson, second by Essler. Roll, please.
Essler.
Aye.
Semple. Aye. Weisenthal.
Aye.
Tyson.
Aye.
Prusky.
Aye.
And the financial reports are accepted. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item number 4, public comment. Anyone wishing to come before council with any questions, comments, other than information that's already on the agenda may do so at this time. Please state your name, your address, and limit your comments, if you can, or questions to 3 minutes or less. And the floor, the podium is open. Anyone? Seeing no one making a move towards a mad dash to the podium, we'll close the public comment and move on to response to public comment. Turn to, we have, where is?
Mr. Schultz, I think, had a quick
Mr. Schultz.
response, Mayor.
So last meeting, we had a resident came forward with some questions and comments, and you have our response.
I do, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is in response to the questions and some comments that Terrence Yorchuk from the Roseman area seniors had made at the last council meeting. And so really it was kind of 3 main topics that Mr. Yorchuk had brought up. The first one was the air conditioning at the Steeple Center, and I think as all of us in our daily lives, we realize that comfort levels are always sometimes a challenge to meet for everyone. And so we have talked with our staff and with the seniors and trying to kind of find that happy medium level to keep everyone comfortable when they're in the Steeple Center. Oftentimes, people who sit by the windows are a little warm. People who sit near the vents are a little cool, and the people in the middle of the room are just right. So we always encourage the seniors to remember to bring a sweater or a light shirt or jacket with them when they come to the building in case they're in one of those spots that might be a little bit cooler than others. But we do work with the seniors on a regular basis on this topic, so we'll continue to do that. The second item that Mr. Yorchuk brought up was the proposed service agreement. We currently do not have a service agreement with the senior organization in Rosemount. We have several service agreements with other organizations. We have been talking to them about the possibility of a service agreement with the seniors, but there is not one in place right now. And so I know he had some questions about the language independent contractor and about liability insurance, and those are things that are usually pretty standard in a service agreement. And we'll continue to work with them and our city attorney on that if we ever get to a point where we do have a service agreement. Right now, it's just been something that's been proposed. The seniors have approached Park and Rec staff about possibly taking over some of the programs that they currently run, just because it's a little bit easier for us to handle registrations and take payment and things like that, and the seniors don't really have that access to technology and things like that. So we're looking at some of those things. Should we get a service agreement, it will come before you at a work session and then to a regular meeting in the future if that were to happen. And then the final thing was there was a comment about the Rosemount area senior money. They have their own bank accounts. They have, I think, some CDs, some saving accounts, some checking accounts. Just to be very clear on this, we have no interest in their money. Their money is their money. They have their own board. Terrence Yorchek is the treasurer for the organization. We've made this very clear to them on several occasions that should we take over some programs that they're currently running that they want us to do, that we still would not need or want their money. Their money will stay with their organization where they can do with it what they would like. And so I just want to be very clear on that. That's not our intention. It never has been. We've got money that we have in our own budget that we can operate efficiently and make things work. So that is the final thing. But I did talk to Terrence personally on the phone. And I asked him if he had any other questions to feel free to stop down and see me at the community center or let me know, and I would meet him at the Steeple Center. And so he was more than willing to do that in the future if need be. So,
Great. Any questions or comments from council?
No.
Otherwise,
No.
Thank you very much.
right, thank you.
Appreciate that. With that, that closes response to public comment. Item 5, we'll move on to consent agenda. Item 6, we have series of items. I'll run through these quickly. Bills listing, minutes for our regular and work session on June 6th. Performance measures, a donation acceptance from Joel Walsh. Accept Public Streets and Utilities Emerald Isle 2nd Edition. Approval of a final plat for Rosecott Place Apartments. Declaring a crash attenuator as surplus property. Approval of council travel. And temporary on-sale liquor license for Seltz. With that, is there any items council would like to pull for any reason?
Nope.
Nope.
I am going to pull performance measures, item D. So with that, I would look to someone to approve the consent agenda with item D removed.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with item 6D removed.
I'll second.
Motion by Essler, second by Fresky to approve the consent agendas items A through J with D removed. Roll, please.
Klimple. Aye. Weisenthal.
Aye.
Tyson.
Aye.
Fresky. Aye. Essler.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. The item 6D, which I'm going to call up Ms. Malika to talk about. I pulled this a little bit for recognition here on how we kind of operate the city here, and what these performance measures mean.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, in 2010, the legislature created the Council on Local Results and Innovation, which in turn created the comprehensive performance measurement system for cities and counties. Cities and counties can voluntarily participate in this. We began last year. We were one of the 38 cities and 28 counties that participated in the program. We did receive just over $3,000 for our participation in it. There are 29 performance measures. We currently report on over 10 in our annual budget book, so it was not a lot of extra work for the staff. It was just making sure that we reported that to the State Auditor's Office. We did add one this year. One of them was the nuisance code enforcement cases. and they wanted it reported per 1,000 residents. It's 2.38, so that's our new measure for this year. We report our bond rating every year, so hopefully that stays the same tomorrow. Exciting. We had previously reported Part 1 and 2 crime rates. There has been a change in the reporting on how that's done. The state auditor's office has not updated their requirements yet, so we added some other measures just to make sure that we cover the 10. So our staff has been doing a great job providing these measures and all of my many, many questions to get this information back so that we can report and ensure that we continue to do the great job we're doing.
Thank you. I just wanted to call out that we have some of these performance measures listed on our website. Residents can take a look at it. And just calling out that as an organization, we do use performance measures to help us manage the city's operations. So appreciate that. Thank you. Any questions on any of the performance measures? With that, then I'll go ahead and move the adoption of the resolution approving the 2022 performance measures. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Weisensell, second by Klimpel. Roll, please.
Weisenthal.
Aye.
Tyson.
Aye.
Prestwick.
Aye.
Essler.
Aye.
Klimpel. Aye.
And that is approved, 6D. Now we'll get into some of the meat of tonight. We have a fair number of hearings and new business. So first up, 7A. First is 2023 Neighborhood Infrastructure. Let's see, Improvement Project. Mr. Erickson, our city engineer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have, this evening is the assessment hearing for this project. And I have what I will attempt to make a brief presentation, yet get the information out there as needed for everybody. So I'm going to skip that because we don't really need to see the calendar. Here's the project location. Again, I know council is familiar with this as we've talked about that. Again, just quick comment, we're doing surface reconstruction on the roads. There is some curb and gutter based on what is currently existing. We'll also extend sanitary sewer and water main throughout the project area. We are also constructing a path, multi-purpose trail along the east side of Bacardi. There will be no internal sidewalks constructed as part of the project. And then we do have some improvements for the drainage and stormwater in the area. So just a note, I wanted to mention that the feasibility report showed a much wider street along Bacardi. We're narrowing that down just, there was, in an effort to save both cost on the road as well as realizing that traffic is not going to be the same as it is further south on Bacardi. The big part of tonight's assessment hearing is it is required by statute for the city to be able to levy assessments on the property owners that are abutting the project. The city council is required to hear and consider all objections to the proposed assessments. I did want to note that the property owners can challenge the assessments. The objections must be raised at or before the assessment hearing. As of today, I had not received anything, and I neglected to check with the city clerk if she had seen anything. Thank you, Aaron. So,
None received.
And then they have to be in writing and signed. But again, since we haven't seen any of those, I don't believe there will be any challenges. So, and again, there may be options for assessment deferrals, but those the plan is not to address those at this meeting. So if any of the residents would like to check on the deferrals for that, they're welcome to contact the staff, and we can point them in the proper direction on that. Just a discussion real quick on how we generally calculate assessments. It's based on 35% of the surface cost. Collector roads like Bacardi are generally, we reduce that down to what a local street width would be. So in this case, that 30-foot road is reduced down to roughly a 24-foot wide pavement, which is what is in the neighborhood. So We do take the assessment calculations based on per unit. In other words, each of the taxable parcels based on what the county has as tax records currently. So, and then any of the remaining cost on the project is then funded via either CIP funds, the utility core funds. This one does also have state aid funding from MnDOT as well. So I did want to call out a few of the changes that we made in particular on this project. And again, this was discussed at the work session earlier. We extended the payback timeline from 10 years to 15 to try to reduce those annual payments for the owners that will allow their assessment to be certified to the county taxes. We're also allowing a partial prepayment of assessments. So in the past, that was not generally allowed. So it was the all or nothing. You pay the whole assessment or it will get certified to the county taxes. And then we did reduce that assessment amount based on our general policy from 35%. It's 24%, but it really works out to be $10,000 per parcel. And I did want to mention, I mentioned in the council report, but just to call that out, we're proposing that the property owners be allowed to have an additional special assessment to cover the connection charges. So that would be for any of the property owners that would be installing connecting to the new system with a permit by September of this year. And then the work, of course, would need to be completed as soon as possible. Part of the reason is that we realize that connection charge is that's another large amount. It is, every other property within the city has done that, so every new home that's been built for a long time, I'll put it that way, have paid those connection charges. So that's their buy-in to the system, if you will. So that would require a separate agreement, and that would be a 10-year payback for those property owners. And then I did also want to note that we put a number of different links for resources and assistance for the homeowners on the city's website. So just to kind of run through the project cost. So total project cost, as you can see, we had our feasibility report back earlier this year. The final engineer's estimate. So the feasibility report was almost $5 million. The engineer's detailed estimate after that was almost a little over 5.6, and then ultimately the low bid came in at just a little over 4 million. So the bidding climate has been kind of a little goofy this year. So you'll note the numbers are all over the board there. I'm just glad that the last column is the lowest number, as I think probably everybody is. So I did want to run through just the funding portion. So the important columns are the far right column and then the one next to it. So that shows the adjustment that was made as discussed at the work session. So had there been no adjustment and used the city's the standard policy, those assessments in the bottom line there would have been about a little over $14,000, getting closer to 15. Because of how the adjustments were made, that assessment dropped down to 10. I did include the feasibility report number just to show that initially those numbers were much worse, if you will. So then finally, this is just a map again showing which parcels are being assessed. And in that $10,000, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's based on the county tax records. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and do my best to answer any questions of council.
Floor is open to the council.
Yeah, you mentioned you'd put information on the website for the residents, but I think you also sent all of the residents a mailer as well, right? With a lot of that same information?
We did. Yep. Thank you for mentioning that. We did put, that was in a letter. There was sort of an infographic that Lee was really helpful in putting together, and taking the pretty side of that and making it much more user-friendly instead of having the engineers do that, so she did a great job, and hopefully everybody understood what was in there much better than if I was explaining it, so.
And I understand you also took some one-on-one meetings with some homeowners as well?
We did, yes. We had a neighborhood meeting. We met with about Jeff Pearson, who is the WSB project manager on this, and he also provides assistant city engineer services. We met with 22 of the property owners. Number of questions, when does the project start? How does the connection works? What's the assessment cost, and how do I pay that? Generally, those meetings went really well. There was a lot of very good questions from the property owners, so.
And this way. Just as a follow-up, just to share kind of with some of those that may be watching that didn't come in tonight, what is the tentative schedule for the work?
So we actually have a pre-construction conference this week, so the contract was awarded. I would anticipate construction will start probably by the end of the month is my guess, but we're still, I'll know better after our meeting on Thursday to find that out. But it'll be this summer, so late June, hopefully, and then it should finish up by the end of October.
And how will residents know when, other than a truckload of workers and equipment show up on their street, how will they know?
We have another mailer that will need to go out in very short order, just with some additional information. Should City Council see that, that allowing that additional assessment to be done for the connection charges, we'll put some information in that. I do want to wait till after the pre-construction meeting, just so that we can provide that additional information as well as to when that will work. We'll pass out the information as well. We'll have an inspector on site as part of this with WSB. He connects with all the residents on site. We'll pass his phone. I believe his name is on the website. If it's not, I'll make sure that we get that on there.
And there will be, I don't know, I wouldn't say daily, but maybe weekly updates on
We will have
website?
weekly updates as well on the website.
Okay.
The only thing I was just going to call out, if this is an appropriate time, I just want to thank you, Brian, Nick, and the city and staff and Logan and everybody for taking all the feedback that we got from a lot of the information sessions and a lot of the public feedback and, kind of doing what's best for everybody here. You know what I mean? Making these corrections, making these, this adjustment to the city and the infrastructure, but then doing it in a way that is a good partnership with everybody. So I just want to say thank you to staff for helping out with that process.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, at this time, if there's no other questions, I'll move the floor to be open for the public hearing on assessments. Anyone wishing to come forward may do so at this time. Please state your name, your address, and if you can, limit your comments or questions to 3 minutes or less.
I'm Terry Kramer. I live at 2075 128th. It's a pretty simple question. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page with everybody. When the assessments go through the street, are they going to be stubbed into the property? If we don't hook up right away, or we decide to hook up at a later date, I'm assuming, or I think I was told once that those improvements would be stubbed into your property. Is that correct?
We'll take that comment and then try to collect the comments and then respond.
Pardon me?
We'll take all the comments and then
Oh,
we'll
okay.
respond.
That's all I had.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the council members for having us do a little comment. My name is Diane Lindo. I live at 2193 130th Way in Rosemount. And I got the letter, and I just had a couple quick questions for clarification purposes. First off, it was talking in there about no interest being paid within 30 days of an adoption. Is this different than confirmation of assessment? Because that's also listed down at the bottom with another date of October 31st. So I was a little bit confused by that verbiage. So I don't know if that's the same thing or if that's the different thing. And then it also stated, after it said 30 days of adoption, when does that 30 days begin for the no interest payments? Is it 30 days from tonight when you say, yep, we're gonna do these assessments? And then it goes on to state, you can pay up through October 31st with 0 interest. So it's kind of confusing. So is it in July when we have to pay it? Is it by October when we have to pay it? That was very confusing and vague. And then I know you had noted that the hardship assessment deferrals should be directed towards the city. Who do I need to direct that to? Because again, that's vague as well. The statute actually states that you should get forms from the county auditor, which I don't know who that is, so I did send something out to the public records because I do want to get on that, because that also is a 30-day time clicker. So is it 30 days from the adoption? Is it 30 days from the confirmation? And that's important to me because I share a home with my mom and she is 85 and it will create a hardship for us. So that's very important to me. So if I don't get it from the county and I have to get it from the city, because it also mentions I can get it from the city clerk toward the end of the letter. So that's also very confusing. So I would like that to be addressed as well. And I think I have that. I think that's all I wanted. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Jackie Young. I live at 12895 Bengal Avenue. And I also had the same question as Diane about, is it 30 days from today or is it October 31st for the payment? Another question I had was really about the objection. So if you object to it, what do you object to? Yes, I object to having to pay $10,000. I also kind of object to the fact that there's an additional $6,000 hookup for water and sewer. So it's like you pay this, plus you pay this, plus you pay all of your own costs to take care of the systems that you have. So I just want to know what can you object to, and what does that do?
Okay. Could staff put up the one objection slide? Can that be pulled up? Is there anyone else? Yeah, that's the one. All right, before I close public hearing, I look to, probably look to Nick, maybe?
I think you can,
Or Brian,
you can
or
close
both?
it and then we can answer.
Close it? Okay, we can
Yeah.
do that. So I'll move to close the public hearing, seeing that no one else is coming forward. Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hearing is closed. All right, questions. The things that I heard, and I'll open up to either of you that can speak to it. So on one, I did hear where that connection is going to be left once when the is completed, up to, into, and what is it that they're actually leaving there? Is it a closed connection, open? How is it?
So the services will be extended to either the edge of the right-of-way, so the property line, or they will be 10 feet past the edge of pavement. There's a couple unusual situations in this particular neighborhood just because of how the roads were constructed and the actual boundaries. So we will extend the services to at least 10 feet past the edge of pavement. So we'll put a curb stop in for the water, so there'll be a valve on that. And then the sanitary sewer will be capped at that point as well.
Okay. Is there a diagram or a picture that would help the resident understand what kind of, they're not going to really see it, but it'll be underground, or what they're going to see above ground?
Yeah, so, I mean, generally, we'll have some information on that. And we do our best to coordinate with the property owners as well. So I know there were a couple of residents that I talked to at the neighborhood meeting that their preference would be to relocate to a different side of the driveway, for example, just because based on where their well was. We didn't have all the information on where every well was, where the septic systems were at. So the one key point is that the water and sewer stubs would be in a single trench. So
So then I would suggest that if you haven't talked with Mr. Kramer specifically about that, that he gets
Yep.
follow-up on that.
yes, we will do that.
Hey, can I just ask a follow-up question on that before we move on? The 10 feet from the pavement or to the property line, again, without knowing, is there situations where the 10 feet from the pavement does not get them to the property line, and then it would go to the property line?
No, there's a few situations where because of how the road was constructed and it's not actually in the right of way, so they had to, after it was platted, they had to secure some additional easement in several locations. So if we put it to the edge of the right of way, the edge of the right of way is actually in the road. So we want to bring it at least 10 feet past the edge of the road.
So it may go quite a few feet into the property, potentially.
Yes, and it would be, for the most
Okay.
part, it'll be an easement at that point, so.
Okay, so the 10-foot could be, if it's literally on the end, you could go 10 feet into the property.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, thanks.
All right. I also heard clarification on dates.
So should council make a motion to approve tonight's resolution, the 30-day clock would start as of today, so June 20th would be the start of that 30-day clock. And then,
I heard two different comments. One was, I guess, the day of adoption, which is what you're saying now.
correct.
And then the day of confirmation.
It's actually a certification, so it gets
Certification.
certified to the county. And that's roughly that last, October 31st. It may not be that day. If it's a Saturday, it would be.
Last business day?
It is generally the last business day in October, and that's when we have to get those, that's when finance needs all that information so that they can make the calculations and get that information to the county in sufficient time.
All right, so to be clear, the 30-day clock starts today, or tomorrow, essentially, if we approve the assessment.
That's correct.
And then the difference of the other is confirmation or certification of the cost to the county.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mayor, I think the important question for the resident was interest-free until October 31. So pay whatever you'd like between now and October 31, up to the full 10,000, and it's interest-free off your property taxes. Okay.
And then the other one was the deferral. Does that 30-day clock start today?
I'm less clear on that, and I think Tia and I need to look into that maybe, but, so we can get a more direct answer on that. But, yep.
So that one's on the deferral. All right, and then I heard, if you were wanting to object, before the end of this meeting, you need to be in writing and signed and submitted to the clerk that you're objecting. And I guess I look to, is there anything in particular that they should be putting in there if they're objecting to something? It's just, you just can't put, I object.
No, that's fine. Yeah, a handwritten note, just to get your name in the file would be just fine. Yep, so.
I'll just jump
Yeah,
in
go ahead.
real quick if I could. Mayor, council members, I think there was part of the question was what would they be objecting to if they filed it? It would be strictly only the special assessment for the street project. The connection fees that could optionally be added to the assessment are not a special assessment. That is a financing tool for the resident. That is a fee that anyone who's connecting into the public system must pay. That's not objectionable.
Those are connections into our system, so.
Correct.
Any new house, any old house, anybody connecting to our system are paying those fees that were shown.
It would generally be just a new house or new connection into the system. So if you were to tear the house down and reconstruct something new there will be no new no new connection charges at that point.
And that amount's not part of the assessment. It's strictly at the option of the homeowner if they wish to opt into that portion of the assessment, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. And that would be via a separate agreement. And so essentially that's, what the property owner is doing is waiving an assessment hearing and they're agreeing to that cost. But again, that option is only for anybody who would plan to make that connection this year.
Okay. And can you explain the difference here? So tonight, they can raise their objection, and then this third bullet point here, to appeal to district court, a person must serve a notice of appeal on the mayor within 30 days of adoptions of the assessment.
That's
So-
correct.
So we get told tonight, if that's the case, and then what's the follow-up? We tell them, yes, you're still getting assessed, and then they go to district court?
Yeah, so there's a couple options. The council could say, well, let's take a step back and look at the assessments again. Because generally there is going to be benefit to the property. So essentially what is being objected to is the amount of the assessment. And so that's really where the push is. So, you know, the council could say, well, let's take another look at this. And should the assessments be changed? Should council say, no, we're gonna move forward, we're gonna pass the resolution and adopt them? That objection of the property owner allows them to take it the step further and
To
go to
district
district court.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
So you have to
that-
be on record tonight if you want to take it to that next step.
That's correct. And so, and the requirement, of course, you know, they'd likely have to talk with an attorney,
And do that,
exactly.
okay?
If I could, Mayor, that would only be for that individual's assessment. That's the only,
Right.
you know, it's strictly for that property owner, not on the whole, I guess.
Right. Okay. Look to council if there was anything you heard that I didn't follow up on? All right. And could we make sure that maybe those things are reiterated in the letter that goes out? Hopefully make a couple of those things clear. All right, so with that, we have a resolution. Anyone wishing to move forward on that resolution may do so now.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution approving the assessment roll for the 2023 Neighborhood Infrastructure Improvement Project, City Project 2023-04.
I second.
Motion by Essler, second by Tyson. Roll, please.
Tyson?
Aye.
Prestwick?
Aye.
Essler?
Aye.
Limple?
Aye.
Weisenthal?
Aye. That completes item number 7A with the adoption of that resolution. Moving on to next item, 7B, public hearing for proposed tax abatement. Mr. Van Oss, Development Coordinator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So today we have a resolution on behalf of Gymnast LLC for a potential tax abatement regarding their proposed technology campus at the Umore parcel of 280 acres. As the council may be aware, Gymnast LLC submitted a PUD master development plan in December that was approved by the Planning Commission and then approved by the council in March. It would be for several buildings as part of a technology campus for the applicant Gymnast LLC. A part of this project included a potential property tax abatement. It was brought to the council initially in January. However, staff was working on some of the details of the agreement and how it would work functionally. And it was tabled in March, and it is brought back before the council now. So as part of this potential abatement, we have a representative from Ellers here to discuss both tax abatement and then the specifics of this project and how it would kick in. And then we also have a representative from Gymnast LLC to discuss the project and answer any questions from the council. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ellers.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Rebecca Kurtz from Ellers.
Welcome.
And thank you. And as mentioned, I'm going to give a high-level overview of Abatement, for those of you that have heard me talk about tax increment before, you're going to see that there are a lot of similarities. So happy to answer any questions. Feel free to interrupt. But I also don't want to spend a lot of time on something that you may be already familiar with. And then at the end, I will touch on the highlights of how Project Gymnast and the abatement would be working together. So I'm going to take a step back, just again, that reminder, why would the city or any public entity even consider providing assistance for a project? And really it's looking at that overall economic development strategy for the community and the specific goals that your community may have, whether it is creating jobs, redevelopment, cleaning up pollution, constructing affordable housing. In the case of Gymnast, we're looking a lot at increasing the tax base and creating some jobs. And then that overall changing the community's market conditions or helping facilitate something that is not happening or may not happen on its own. So when we talk about tax abatement, this definition here, the working definition, is capturing all or a portion of local property tax revenues from specific parcels for a specific period of time. And one of the big differences from tax increment is that each taxing jurisdiction that will participate in the abatement gets the option to hold a public hearing and then take a vote on whether or not their portion of the taxes would be subject to the abatement. And so the city council will vote only on its portion of the taxes. We have reached out to the county and the school district. Both have declined, but they would have had the opportunity to vote on their specific portion. So with that, as we look at, again, how tax abatement works, this you'll see is probably a good reminder of what we went through with tax increment. This tax abatement is being set up so the base tax capacity or the taxes from city, county, and school district would continue to go to the taxing jurisdictions. Now, in this specific project, we recognize the property is currently tax exempt. When it is sold and becomes sold to the private property or the private entity, there will be a small amount of tax revenue that will come to all taxing jurisdictions. The city will, with the way this is structured, the city would retain that. I will say it is very minimal and probably will not make a big difference for you, but it is set up that way. In the case of Gymnast, then, as I mentioned, the county and the school we have been in communications, reached out to them. They have declined, so they will not be participating in the abatement. So if this moves forward, they will continue to retain their taxes and see that increase or that benefit from new development and see that immediately. The piece that we're going to talk about this evening is the city portion of the taxes. And I'll go into the details of that a little further. In many cases with abatement, if the city chose to approve the abatement, the city then would see a delay in when they would receive that benefit. So the new project would happen, the taxes would be paid, those taxes likely would be directed to the project, and then at the end of the abatement, the city would see the benefit of that increase in tax base. So again, prior to the abatement, those properties have that base value. In the case of this project, we have worked with the county, and again, today that base value is very minimal because it is tax exempt. The market value is estimated to be about $10 million. However, with it being tax exempt, it's zero today. The base will be based on that $10 million. When the property is sold. Again, we will find that out from the county assessor at the time of sale. So again, taxes today are zero because it's tax exempt. With the future market value, we've worked with Gymnast and the county to get an estimate of what that new value will be when those 5 buildings are completed. Because there are a lot of unknowns and it is a very large project that is being proposed, the assessor has given us a range between $68.4 million to $84.9 million for a completed market value. The example and the numbers I'm going to walk through today do assume that $84.9 million. With that, then, what we are estimating based on a market value completed with the 5 buildings of $84.9 million is that the city portion of the taxes will be about $412, almost $413,000 annually when the project is fully constructed. I'm going to pause here, remind us of the notice, and then we'll talk about the deal points for this specific project. So with tax abatement, I know that we had gone through the public hearing. There had been some delays, and so we have republished. And with that, there is a notice requirement of 10 days or more prior to the hearing. That has been completed, and those requirements of identifying gymnasts, the properties that are going to be abated, or the property that is being developed has been identified in that, along with an estimated total amount. We are here then tonight where the council after this will hold a public hearing and then consider the resolution that has been included that would approve the abatement, including a maximum term. There are some benefits and findings, and then if the abatement is in the public interest. And these are required by Minnesota statutes. So you can see there are many options of why this project might be in the public interest, based again on the information that we have learned and been working on. We believe it's increasing or preserving the tax base and then providing employment opportunities. So again, we've gone through the process from gathering the information, documents have been drafted, we're at the public hearing, and then there will be that opportunity to consider the resolution. For this specific project, the terms of the abatement are a little unique from what we maybe have seen on other projects. After discussions, it was negotiated or determined that gymnasts did want the city to receive some of the benefit from the new development, but also depending on where that market value ended up over the 20-year term of the abatement, wanted that opportunity to be able to receive a reimbursement if the tax level got to a certain point. So the proposed abatement that you're considering this evening is with the city retaining the first $1 million of tax increment revenue from the project. And that, when I say $1 million, it is focusing on the city portion of the taxes. So city taxes from this development, the first $1 million would be retained by the city. Anything that was generated on an annual basis in excess of $1 million or paid in excess of that $1 million would be the abatement that would then be reimbursed to gymnasts if you did decide to move forward with approval of this. Again, that assessor estimate for the project is between that 68 and almost 85 million. We did run some scenarios to see what would it really take to get to that $1 million for the abatement to even kick in. And so again, based on your current tax rate, the project would need to be valued at $85 million from year one, and have an increase at 6% annually for 20 years to reach that point of generating $1 million in city-only taxes. And, you know, this is a calculation based on what we know today, but I think the point that I do want to make is we are not anticipating that this abatement would kick in anytime in the immediate future. In my opinion, it may be, my opinion is it likely may not ever kick in the abatement, but if it will not be immediately for you. As I mentioned, school and county are not participating, so they're only looking at the city portion of this. With that, I am happy to answer any questions. I know you've talked about this many times and heard these presentations multiple times, but if there's questions, happy to answer them.
Could you put up the last slide, just for reference?
Yes.
There, okay. Any questions?
Yeah, so I understand the school and county are not participating, and obviously this is a stopgap measure from the developer to limit their tax liability in case it does grow, right? But what was their response or reaction, I guess? I mean, because we're taking all the risk in terms of, you know, they're using the abatement dollars to potentially subsidize the project, or at least limit their risk. But the school and county aren't participating at all. I maybe can understand that the school maybe not participating, but I'm surprised that the county wouldn't be participating in a potential abatement, especially when you're looking at the dollars we're talking about here and the unlikeliness of ever hitting that. I'm just surprised that the county is unwilling to not also ante up a little bit.
Right. I will start with the school portion of that. There were discussions with the school, and ultimately it is, and I was not part of them, but ultimately it is my understanding that Gymnast chose to not push the school for their participation, again, just because of some of the school funding and not wanting to take that. So my understanding is that was a decision that was kind of a mutual agreement between the school, but Gymnast was supportive of that decision too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
From the county, and I was not a participant in those meetings, so I would look to people that were to speak more directly on their response.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and council members, to my knowledge, the county hasn't done an abatement for an economic development project in, I'd say, recent or memorable history. We have been continuing to work with them on partnerships for other infrastructure improvements that would be owned and controlled by the county. So while they aren't, or they've declined to financially participate through an abatement, we continue to work with them on those other pieces that are critical to the development of this project.
Again, I'm still disappointed. I mean, given the magnitude of what this project is and what it brings to the, assuming we know assuming we have an idea what it is, it just kind of, it's going to put Dakota County on the map, put Rosemont on the map, and the fact that they're unwilling, and again, there's a pretty low probability of risk here. I'm just really surprised and disappointed that they're not willing to participate.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I'm here.
I will just ask, and I don't know if anything could be, but for viewers at home who are watching this is all very, code names, et cetera, which I totally understand. But do we have any timeline of when some of the information can be unveiled to our residents?
I'll have the applicant step up and speak to that.
That'd be great, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Mayor, City Council members. My name is Dan Burns. I'm an attorney from Taft Law Firm, and I'm here as a representative of the company and the project tonight. And I'll go through a few points and then address some of the questions and hopefully be able to clarify some points with you this evening. The company and I have been working with staff at the city for many months and really appreciate the collaboration, the support in this effort. Your team's phenomenal. It's great. You're great. This project is very exciting. The company is working on a nationwide site selection effort and has identified the Umore Park site as a potential candidate to build a high-tech campus consisting of office space, warehouse space, and data halls, which would contain networked computer servers. And these servers would be used for remote storage, processing, and distribution of large amounts of data. The facility will be for the company's own use. They will not be leasing the space to any other companies. As this is still a highly competitive process, the company cannot divulge its identity at the time, which is why I'm here today. However, I can share that Gymnast LLC is a project entity representing a Fortune 500 company that is truly a great community partner in the locations in which they operate. My client has also been working directly with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development and Greater MSP, and both organizations are very supportive of the project. As has been shared, this exciting development would involve significant investment from the company, yielding a substantial increase in the tax base, and would spur economic development in the area. And so before you, we have the public hearing and the request to approve a tax abatement program and the tax abatement agreement, as these are crucial milestones to help enable the project to move forward. So going back to some of the points specifically, there's a concern about the school district and the county participation. I'd just like to add a little bit for the school district non-participation. One of the things actually in the statute for granting a tax abatement, it allows for a certain duration of years, but if one of the taxing jurisdictions declines participation, it actually increases amount of years to the full 20 years. So otherwise, it would have only been 15 years, but by the school district denying or declining to participate, it allowed it to move forward to 20 years, which gave a little bit more level certainty. And again, just for my client's sensitivity to sort of tweaking funding with school districts, we really don't want to do that. The county, as Nick did a great job of jumping in, the county, at this time, my client is in active conversation with the county to see how the county can support and show its support for the project. And right now, with the city staff's help, that's going to be focused on discussing infrastructure with the road improvements, street improvements around the site. As far as a timeline, this is an ever-moving ball and can kicked a little bit here and there, but my current understanding is there is a point at which the negotiations with the current property owner would force sort of the name to come out. But my client wishes to, again, because of the competitive nature of the site selection, we want to make sure all the ducks are in the row, everything's a go for the project before divulging the identity, and appreciate everybody's cooperation, response, and respect of that.
Thank you.
I would just add as well, they will come forward for other planning approvals through the PC and City Council. So this is just one step among many. You'll be seeing applications for site plans and everything else again in the near future if the project moves forward, and then they'll reveal themselves at the time.
I have a few questions to walk me down this. How many acres are we talking about right now?
Approximately 280.
And how many buildings on that 280 are we talking with this abatement? Anything and everything that gets built on that 280, or we talked about an office building and some ancillary and...
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, I'll probably point to one of the documents in the council packet under the tax abatement agreement. The way that this deal is structured, and Dan, certainly feel free to jump in if I mischaracterize a part of this here. But part of the negotiation or the dialogue between the city and the company was understanding that base, and then how we get to what they can maximize on the property, so that we're all at the same level of understanding about how and when this could kick in based on that valuation that Rebecca walked through during the financial analysis part of it. So there is a section there which defines project that would be included under this abatement not exceeding 1 million square feet, whether that's amongst the number of buildings noted within there, or if they choose to reconfigure the site to a certain extent. But that was the mechanism that both our attorney as well as the attorney here representing the project came to an agreement that was an appropriate way to really cap what they can do, so that there was no, say, mischaracterization of the city agreeing to something and then they build something that's significantly larger, therefore immediately triggering some benefit that we weren't anticipating.
And that 1 million square feet translates to somewhere between 68 and 85 million.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then if they were to choose to be on that, then my understanding is then that abatement doesn't go with, let's say, over 1 million square feet. They would be just normal tax.
That is correct.
Okay.
It's meant to allow the company to expand beyond the initial proposed footprint on that project if they so choose.
Okay. All right. Paul?
Yep, so thanks for coming and presenting a little bit. Just to follow up to your comment about the county, I know they're not participating in the abatement, but you mentioned that they are in conversations with other, infrastructure. Any indication of whether they really are serious or likely going to participate in that, or what's your gauge there?
Well, my client certainly hopes so. I think they had conversations as recent as a couple of weeks ago, and there was momentum during that conversation. We talked about potentially being involved in their CIP process this year and including certain improvements, road construction, traffic light, things like that, just kind of tossing out ideas on what can be included in their CIP, and they assist with that. And I believe there's some potential funding as well for those coming from some of the state agencies. All very preliminary at this point in time, but we are excited about the momentum that conversation had.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? I just want to make sure I understand this too. Even though we're using the word tax abatement, that abatement doesn't kick in until after $1 million.
In
That's
taxable
correct.
valuation of
Annually.
Annually.
the city's portion of their entire.
And I would just add that 1 million is not static. There's an inflationary measure on it that will increase every year. So the million is the base that will eventually grow.
That's helpful.
Well, that's helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And that further protects the risk as well.
yeah. Thanks for that clarification. All right, if there's no other questions, we'll move to public hearing. The floor is open. Anyone wishing to speak on this may come before the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, if you please. Noting that we have staff and consultants and lawyers and everybody else here and no one else to come forward, is there anyone else that would like to come forward? Anyone? Last time? I'll move to close the public hearing, seeing that there was no public comment that was made. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed abatement resolution.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. Motion by Fresky, second by Tyson. Roll, please.
Fresky?
Aye.
Essler?
Aye.
Whipple? Aye. Weisenthal?
Aye.
Tyson?
Aye.
That approves public hearing proposed tax abatement items 8B is completed. Next public hearing, vacation of certain easements of the Prestwick Place 23rd edition Plat area. Mr. Numcheck's not here. Mr. Keenberger. You get the easy one. Maybe?
Can't we find the start slideshow? There we go. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. Probably heard me say these a couple of times the past couple of council meetings, but this is a request or a process initiated by the city for vacation of certain easements in the Prestwick Place 23rd Edition Plat area, also known as the area where Lifetime and the city is partnering to construct a recreation facility. So I'm going to go over to the map here just to familiarize everybody, especially those that may be watching this meeting, the northeast corner of Akron Avenue and County Road 42. Here are a couple of the graphical displays of the easement vacations as described in the packet, as well as identified in the attached resolution. And the reason that we're doing this is that it's primarily a matter of cleanup to add both clarity, both during the title process for future transfers of the land within the subdivision, which is Prestwick Place 23rd Edition plat area, and then also when development occurs in the outlots of Prestwick Place 23rd Edition. Again, there's the plat identifying those areas and then those easements that are recorded along with the recently approved final plat from the City Council on March 7th of 2023 of this year. So with those shown there, the motion or the recommended action is to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving the vacation of certain easements within the Prestwick Place 23rd Edition plat, subject to the inclusion of new easements on the recorded plat as shown on the previous slide. And Mr. Mayor can stand for any questions or take them as
Could
you
you
open
go
a
back
public.
to the outlot? And then just for information and clarity, where will the lifetime project be?
The lifetime is generally to be constructed on this lot 1, block 1.
Block 1?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions from council?
Nope.
Seeing none, then I'll move to open up the floor for public hearing on the vacation easements. Anyone wishing to speak on this may do so at this time. Please come forward to the podium, state your name and address, limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And anyone may do so at this time. And again, seeing just staff and consultants. Anyone?
I'll move to adopt a resolution approving the vacation of certain easements within the Prestwick Place 23rd Edition plat, subject to the inclusion of new easements on the recorded plat.
Time out. The hearing is open.
Oh, sorry.
Anyone coming before? Anyone? Motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The hearing is closed. Now I'll accept a motion.
Now I will move to adopt a resolution approving the vacation of certain easements within the Prestwick Place 23rd Edition plat, subject to the inclusion of new easements on the recorded plat.
Second.
Motion by Klimpel, second by Essler. Roll, please.
Essler?
Aye.
Klimpel?
Aye.
Weisenthal?
Aye.
Tyson?
Aye.
Prusky?
Aye.
And that closes with approval 7C. I know it's a long meeting already. There is no unfinished business. We'll move on to 9.
You're doing good.
9A, authorizing the sale of general obligation bonds. Ms. Malika, future, or financial director.
You're seeing me a lot this evening.
Yeah.
Not normal. So this evening, we continue to move forward toward the construction of the new Police Department and Public Works campus, which I am sure everyone is excited about, along with the 2023 Street Improvement Project, which was discussed this evening, and then the extension of Akron Avenue. We're here this evening to move forward with the bond sale that will be used to fund these 3 projects. Doug Green is here from Baker Tilly with more information regarding the bond structuring and sale process.
Oh, good.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I apologize for my
Looking
voice.
forward to your riveting
It might look
presentation.
familiar, right? And I apologize for my voice. I feel a lot better than I sound, so. Well, let's see, let's just go to the second part of that presentation. There we go. All right, just like before, the Port Authority, the purpose of an authorizing resolution is to set the date and time of the sale. It authorizes us to move forward with the preparation of the official statement. It approves the terms of the proposal that really outlines the principal maturities, which is a culmination of all the bond structuring and planning that we've been doing, the bidding parameters, and the key terms for the potential underwriters. It says that we'll bring the results to the City Council at 7 o'clock on July the 11th, and just so everyone is aware, if something crazy happens in the world, this doesn't say you are going to sell the bonds on this date at this time and consider approval. We can always make adjustments up until the day of the sale if we want to or need to. What you have in front of you here is rather confusing, but there's a point to it, and it's one that we've talked about before, is that we're combining not only multiple projects, well, 3 projects, but multiple funding plans, financing plans into one bond issuance. Again, the potential purchasers don't really care what we're doing, all this, but this is, really a culmination again of, it shows all the different components of what we're borrowing money for, the portions that we're paying cash for, and you can just go down the line. There's 4 different funding sources for the police department, public works, and for the 2 street projects, we're borrowing for 3 of them. The levy portion, street portion, water, sewer, storm is paying cash. You see that down there, that equity contribution, that's city cash, and then the portion is paid for by municipal state aid as well. So a lot of different funding sources, but we're able to have, take advantage of the economies of scale, putting this all together, and bond issuances really are more marketable the larger. It's not a reason to sell more bonds, but they are more marketable. I have 2 examples today that really prove that. Again, looking at the annual debt service by purpose, this is debt service, total principal and interest. Again, these are estimates here. With the Police Department Public Works, ramping up that levy portion or just slightly over time, doing level debt service for water, sewer, storm. And then for the 2 street projects, we're amortizing those over 15 years. So just because we're going out 29 years on the Police Department Public Works, that, we could amortize the street projects over any number of years we wanted to. In our planning, we landed on 15 years. And so hopefully, there is about 30 basis points, 0.3% fudge factor in here. So hopefully, over the next month, interest rates will cooperate and either stay the same or go down. Looking at where we are in the market, we have this idea that, oh my goodness, we're in a really vastly different interest rate environment, than we have been since 2006. And that is true to an extent. But when you look out that years to maturity, anything after 10 years out to 29 years, we're still in that 3 to 4 range. It's that short end of the curve that it's vastly different than what we've become accustomed to over the last few years. And I mean, while that's certainly real money, it's in those longer ends where you're accruing that interest over time, over 5, 10, 15, 20, 29 years. That's where the cost really comes in. It's not so much in those early years. So, we are in a higher interest rate environment, but it's thankfully, at the longer end, what I call the longer end is anything over 7 years out, out to 30, is historically still not too bad. And what you have here is last year, that dark purple line, and then 2 months, 2 weeks, and a week ago. So again, hopefully over the next month, we'll see that come down a little bit. So looking ahead, already gone through the public hearing processes. Tonight we're considering resolution authorizing the bond sale. Tomorrow morning, it's a big morning. You have a credit rating presentation. I think it'll go great. Take bids on the 11th, and then bring them to your for your consideration that evening, and then we'll have a relatively quick close on August 1st.
Okay.
So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions from council?
Can we go back to the slide that shows the totals by project? One more. I think for viewers or just for residents, having an understanding of what is the total amount of the bonds we're taking out, and what is the total of that amount, what total are they going to be taxed for? Because we know that many of those funds are gonna be paid for by Lifetime or other funds internally.
Right.
Can you help summarize that?
I certainly can, and maybe others can if I miss it. So these two slides really work in tandem. So these are the sources, uses of funds, and that top line, the par amount of the bonds, that's what we're borrowing. And then those additional three lines, the city equity contribution, the used portion, and then the developer's portion, that's obviously cash that is going to these projects. And on top, the levy, that obviously will fall to the property tax levy, water, sewer, water going to water rates, sewer rates, and storm, so on. So then I'll go to the next slide, and looking with the Police Department Public Works facility, the financing plan right now, or the funding plan right now, is for SKB fees to pay for that. So the way we have it, that levy line structured there, there will, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on.
Lifetime.
Yeah, Lifetime, sorry. So what we have structured here is we have structured these bonds to result in, these debt service payments will result in, on an average size home, there will be a $50 increase in the first 4 years. And then it will level off for the next 10 years. After that, you really can't determine, because we don't know what the overall tax base of the city is going to be. But we can get a pretty good estimate within the first 5 years. And within that first 5 years, on an average size home, it's going to be a $50 increase in year one, another $50 year increase in year two, year three, and year four, up to a total of $200, and then it stays flat. So that is the levy portion. That's the tax impact for the Police Department Public Works facility. If we're looking at the two street projects, you see the levy portion and assessments really cancel each other out. There will be an impact. This is a heavily sewer a project that's going to affect the sewer utility more. So for those street projects, the levy and assessments for the rest of the tax base, there won't be a tax impact on them. It will affect their water and sewer rates, but not the levy portion. Anything to add there?
I would say, Doug, the logic behind that to the council was just as we were going out in the marketplace to do this borrowing, and as we look at the large-scale projects that we've got going on in the city, there was the street CIP is an underfunded fund right now, and so I think on Doug's recommendation and talking with Tia, we decided that let's use this opportunity to replenish the street CIP with some of these large projects that are coming down the pipe. So that's why both the J. Simons project, which you just approved, and then Akron are lumped into this debt issuance.
And is the sense that incrementally it's not very much, but it just presents a little bit bigger package for the bond buyers to accept?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that's absolutely correct. And I'll give you the example that I just came from today of City of Delano had 18 million. They're AA, and we had 8 bids, and Morgan Stanley was the winning bidder. City of Excelsior, AAA rated, $6.5 million, and there was 4 bidders, all from regional underwriters. So you get above, even, I hate to say it, I've been joking, even this together, 50 million, 250, it's not a lot for the market to absorb. But even when you get at that amount, you get some bigger players to come in and, get more bids, and hopefully they're more aggressive. So it every little bit helps. And there's also advantages to time, financing costs, less of our time, less of the bond council's time, and everything else.
Other questions?
Yeah, I know we've talked about this before, but I think for anybody who's listening on YouTube or wherever, the school district levy, because we're saying it's $50 a month up to $250 after 5 years. On average, the District 196 levy that just passed, on average, home in Rosemount, what was that per year, immediately, year one?
I was told $20 a month, so $240.
240.
Yeah.
So it's the equivalent in year, I mean, that's.
We're
that's in year
capping
one.
at 200, not 250,
Yeah.
just so 50
Okay.
times 4. But yeah, so they're at 240 that's gonna hit,
Yep.
and this will be 50 of what a taxpayer feels.
Over the course of 4 years. But
50 every year for 4 years, right? And then, we've talked about this with council during work sessions, that, the city, the 50, kind of sits aside, and the growth that the city just sees, cost of living, health insurance, hiring is going to be a separate bucket that we just, it's impossible to really control, right? So, but yeah, $50, school district was improved, that's in the neighborhood of 240 is what we've been shown.
Okay. And then tomorrow is the bond rating call.
Correct.
When will we get results on what the new rating is? And is that before we sell on July 10th?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, good question. The market requires us to get a new credit rating every time
Okay.
we go out to.
Okay.
Every time we sell new bonds. And so we'll get those results next Tuesday or Wednesday,
Okay. So within a week?
within a
Yeah.
week.
Okay.
Right. So.
All right. Thank you.
Exciting.
And I've got a question, probably more for Tia. Obviously, and I saw it somewhere in the financial statements, but this is feels like a lot of new debt to be taking on as a taxpayer in the city of Rosemount, right? But I think I saw that there are some other bond obligations that will be maturing in the next few years as well. Is that correct?
We have one that is
okay.
dropping off. I think this year's the final payment year. It's $183,000. That's the final payment dropping off. And then there are a couple others, and you'll see those in the budget. I have comments in there of the final pay years. So they're in the comment section, so you'll be able to see that. And then that prints in the budget book too. So I can't tell you off the top of my head. But yeah.
The current bond debt we have is what, 5 million?
It's about that. It's very
Oh,
low.
5 million?
Yes.
Yeah,
It doesn't offset, that's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Takes a piece,
But
tiny
it's-
piece.
But yeah, I think that's been part of the
Incredibly
comment, right,
low.
that we've talked about, I think, with council quite a bit through this, is we really, have never done anything like this as a city. We've been kind of waiting for this opportunity for a long time. We essentially have what other cities would call just about no debt, right? And so, it's a good time.
Certainly for the, the capital expense that we're putting in for a new facility like PDPW, that's, I wouldn't say certainly for us, maybe once in a lifetime. But for the city, it's an evolution for the community, so. Anything else? Would anybody like to move the adoption of the resolution?
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution providing for the competitive negotiated sale of 865,000 general obligation street reconstruction and capital improvement plan bonds, Series 2023A.
Your second?
I'll second.
Motion by Essler, second by Klimpel. Roll, please.
Klimpel,
Aye.
Weisenthal,
Aye.
Tyson,
Aye.
Reski. Aye. Essler.
Aye.
And that approves the resolution for the bond sale. Completes item 9A. We'll move on to 9B, contract awards for Lifetime Fitness Facility. Mr. Schultz, Park and Recs Director.
Mr. Mayor and council members, so this evening we have, again, some bids for the Lifetime Facility Project. This evening we have 7 different specialty areas that have been bid out, and they are recommended to be awarded this evening. The construction manager for the project has included a letter for each of the bid areas, explaining the estimated price and the bid price that we did receive. And so tonight, we're looking at the bids for landscaping, doors and miscellaneous openings, drywall, carpentry, fireproofing and painting, flooring, signage, athletic equipment, and mechanical. And so also in the packet is a Lifetime Rosemount bid summary and budget sheet with a side-by-side comparison that shows the bid amounts. It shows the apparent low, and then it also shows what the target budget was on this. Now, just to clarify one thing that I know might be a question for some of you, if you look at the second page of that side-by-side, you'll see that once you throw in, everything, including the commissioning and the contingencies and things like that, we're looking at about, anywhere from $45 to $44 million in budget, with a target budget of 43. So in part of this, in that earthwork, utilities, and paving, there will be a reimbursable that we will get, Lifetime has to pay a portion of that cost on that 60-40 split. So that will bring that price down once they give us the reimbursable. That'll bring the cost down to 43 million, which is the target for what we are moving forward on.
I didn't get the letter. Oh, I didn't get the letter.
You don't have the letters, but you've got a spreadsheet.
I got a spreadsheet, but I didn't get the letters.
There's the
Look,
letters after each one, right there.
I don't have the spreadsheet.
I have the letters in the packet, but I don't have the spreadsheet.
Yeah, for anybody that may have downloaded the packet before earlier today, the spreadsheet just got added. So if you go to the city's website and jump to page 416, in the packet, you'll see the spreadsheet, which we just got hot off the presses from Lifetime this morning. So page 416, if you just go to the city's website there, you should be able to see that.
so you were saying, Dan, the difference between the subtotal with contingency versus the target budget?
Would be monies that would be reimbursed to the city from Lifetime as part of our development, or as part of the original agreement, where they're paying a portion of the infrastructure and they're paying, a portion of the paving and utilities and things like that. So that brings us back into the $43 million.
43 million.
Yep.
Is everybody seeing that? No?
Got it.
Wow. I like the pretty colors. Any other questions?
Now, as I was
Hold
looking
on,
through
I haven't
the-
got to it yet.
Yeah, as I was looking through the letters today, it looked like they were looking pretty good until we got to a bigger variance, like roughly 10% on the mechanical. Can you explain what maybe happened there?
Yeah, so let me
It's not in here?
just pull that one
Is it
out.
flooring and mechanical?
Plumbing and heating?
It was
Combined
By
mechanical,
mechanical?
23-A.
Is that plumbing, heating, and sprinkler? Scope? Nope, fire
Oh, yeah, I
suppression
see what
separate.
you're saying,
Seven
yes.
mechanical.
So,
Plumbing and heating combined.
the low bid, we were looking at, the estimated cost would be closer to $6 million. The low bid was 6.2. They were non-responsive in their bid with missing information and missing documentation, so we had to go to the next bid, which was Hardy, who has been recommended to be approved, and theirs was a little bit more. I think as we look at, once you go through and look at all of these and combined, there's some that are over, some that are under, and at the end of the day, we're gonna hit our target of 43, so.
Okay. Did you get in there, Paul?
Yep, I'm looking at it right now.
All right, we'll just take a few more minutes. Any other questions or comments? Just offhand, I'm drawing a blank. LOR? Letter of recommendation?
Letter of recommendation,
Okay.
yep. The one thing I will comment also on is we are still missing one item you'll see on here. The exterior athletic is being rebid, And then also the millwork, we have not gotten a bid on that yet. We thought we had a couple bidders lined up, and for some reason, whatever it was, they ended up not bidding. So we are reevaluating how to move forward on that, but we feel like we'll be back in the near future with a solution for that.
And so are those dollars coming out of the contingency, or have they been removed from the budget analysis?
No, they are as part of the budget analysis
Okay, so
as an estimate at this point in
So they'll
time.
be coming out of the contingency dollars?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So as of right now, though, we are over the 43,000 target budget.
43 million,
Yeah, million, yeah, sorry.
just a zero.
Correct. So through the bidding process we are, but lifetime, there are some FF&E with some of the aquatics that will be reimbursed because that is a lifetime expense. And then also for the site improvements, they are responsible for a portion of that, which will cut that down by at least roughly $1.5 million, which would get us to that 43 million.
So going forward, I know because we just got a couple open scopes left here, but can we see that next time we approve the final?
Yep,
Just so we can see the net number?
yep,
Well,
exactly.
The FF&E, yeah, and it's the developable acres where they're doing the installment of the utilities and stuff like that, as we discussed kind of before, yeah.
Yep.
They have their bid total, and then whatever package of stuff that they're responsible should.
Yeah, the
be
earthwork
deducted.
total is across the entire site.
Right.
And then we gotta pull out the lifetime club parcel.
Right.
Right.
And how much of the earthwork is their responsibility? 1.5?
Approximately,
The site's
correct.
about 50/50 on
Yep.
acreage, right? So, yeah.
Oh, well, that would be more than 1.5 then. Oh, I guess the bid came in at 3.2 versus the budget was 5.
Yeah, the budget, the estimated amount was 5.1. SM Henches and Sons was a little over 3.2. So they'll be on the hook for a roughly
1.6.
1.5.
That's a huge savings from budget.
Yeah. So that's why when Councilmember Hempel was asking, about, some of these that have gone over, we've also had one like this in the earthwork, which has come in under quite a bit.
But I think the point is that there should be another line there that shows things that they are responsible, that really takes that
Yes,
total
yeah,
amount down.
and I can put that in there.
And that we're.
Or have them put it in.
Presumably, we would be under the 43 million.
Yep.
At this point, yeah.
And then just from a total project cost perspective, because just getting kind of back to the birth of the deal, right? It was 48 million, 60/40 split, which is, so there's a number of millions that are not shown in this, that's just a straight lifetime FF&E contribution. So just to remind council and folks that have been watching this deal closely at home, that the number that you're seeing here tonight is not all encompassing of the project in terms of what they're bringing, let alone construction, they're acting as our construction manager.
Architect.
Engineer on record, all those types of things, right? So.
Yep.
All right. If there's no other questions, would anyone like to move the recommended action?
I'll make a motion to recommend the city council accept the bids and award contracts to the lowest responsible bidder as described in the letters of recommendation for the following specialty areas: landscaping, doors and miscellaneous openings, drywall, carpentry, fireproofing and painting, flooring, signage, athletic equipment, and mechanical.
A second.
Motion by Fresky, second by Tyson. Roll, please.
Weisenthal.
Aye.
Tyson.
Aye.
Kresge.
Aye.
Essler.
Aye.
Limpel.
Aye.
Motion approves 5-0, completes 9B. We'll move on to 9C. Authorization declaration on site development agreement with Lifetime. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The Port Authority saw and acted upon this exact same action item at their meeting tonight. It was approved unanimously 5-0 by the Port Authority. So in front of you tonight is for the city council to also authorize the declaration of covenants and easements, and then a site development agreement between the city and Lifetime, Inc. And so just to reiterate what we discussed at the Port Authority meeting, two separate documents in front of you tonight. The first is the declaration of easements and covenants, which really establishes easement boundaries up across the property, utility easements, those things of that nature, as well as property use covenants that'll be placed upon the developable portion that'll be developed by Lifetime Incorporated acting as a developer. And so, as we discussed at the Port Authority meeting, this document is a document that cities are not often a party to, but because we are the landowner of the club parcel and have a vested interest in the entire site, we are a signatory to the Declaration of Covenants. As council has reviewed and Port Authority reviewed, it does place some limitations on the use of the remainder of the property, limits some items that Lifetime as a developer would not intend to see or sell the property to. And by and large, those are, the logic behind those covenants and those limitations is really twofold. One is a kind of a brand protection move from Lifetime to ensure that like-minded uses and not competing uses would go next to Lifetime, and they have a real purposeful effort as to what their brand would appear as it enters into a development area. And then, so those are things like fast food, things that run a bit contrary, tobacco shop, things that run a bit contrary to the healthy lifestyle that Lifetime supports. And then also, and probably more importantly and more directly, are operations and offerings that the Lifetime Club parcel itself will offer. So chiropractor, salon, nail salon, spa, cycle, bar fitness, Orange Theory fitness, right? All those things exist inside of Lifetime, and so they, of course, as a wise developer, would not allow or want a competitor to be right outside their front door. So that's really what lives inside the Declaration of Easements and Covenants. Important to note, that Lifetime, as the developer has the ability to sell to who they wish, and if they end up making a change someday and have a different opinion about somebody who presented a development opportunity to them, they can certainly make a different decision and change this document and come back for an amendment to this document. So there's a brief explanation of the declaration. Secondly, and probably a more lengthy document, is the development agreement. Pretty typical development tool that we see often as we enter into developments with private parties that really establishes the roles and responsibilities of the city in the development deal and the developer in the development deal, who's paying for the installation of utilities, how are we splitting those costs, et cetera. In this deal, like we just discussed with how we're splitting apart the earthwork on the construction project, the Lifetime portion and the developable portion is about a 50-50 split across the acreage. The net developable acreage is about a 50-50 split. So utility installation, private roadway, the spine road through the middle of the road is a private road. They're going to build a little roundabout in the middle. That's all private, not city-owned, so maintained, plowed by the private developer and their management company if they choose to hire one someday. But we, as the developer of Lifetime, the club, own a portion of that of that project, right? And so that kind of lives on our side of the ledger as we do the $21 million cost split that we just discussed with the bond council also. So 50-50 split really on utilities and installation of infrastructure. And then importantly, the development deal also discusses Aspen Avenue, which is the eastern boundary road connecting Highway 42 up to Connemara. Lifetime will be assessed, and they will have the ability to spread it across their developable parcels. An assessment for the southern portion of Aspen Avenue up to that spine road. North of the spine road, the city will own an assessment. On the west side of the road, developer or owner on the east side of the road would own an assessment on that side. And so Aspen Avenue becomes a fairly traditional development assessment agreement. And Lifetime has agreed to receive an assessment of some nature on the southern portion, western half. So, and there's a lot of reasons why we want to get that project done. Lifetime certainly needs it up to the spine road to feed folks into the development. But we really see that as a long-term kind of planning tool. It's a traffic reliever off the stress that's placed on Connemara and Akron. And that intersection has had a lot of conversation lately as we've seen a number of apartment complexes, single-family homes being constructed out there. The construction of Aspen and the connection of Aspen between 42 and Connemara really will serve as a reliever on that property. If you're a person living east of Aspen Avenue, you need to get to Apple Valley. You can likely take Aspen Avenue down, hang a right on 42, and start going full highway speed over to Apple Valley, avoiding the stoplight, avoiding potential traffic at Connemara and Akron. Doesn't take away the fact that we're currently under a traffic study for the entire area and would like to see a traffic change if supported by the study at Connemara and Akron, but Aspen will be an important road, and so I just wanted to spend a moment chatting about Aspen, and just for the public at home to know that that is going to be a help, I think, as Connemara continues to eventually, in the not so distant future, connect all the way to Blaine Avenue. So those are the two documents in front of you tonight, and would happily answer any questions.
Floor is open for council. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, someone like to move the recommended action?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to recommend that the city council authorize execution of the various agreements related to the Lifetime project.
Second.
Motion by Tyson, second by Essler. Roll, please.
Tyson?
Aye.
Preskey?
Aye.
Essler?
Aye.
Semple?
Aye.
Weisenthal?
Aye. That completes 9C with a 5-0 approval. Going on to 9D. Hang in there, folks. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, members of the council. I'll try to make this one quick, and certainly could have lived on the consent agenda, but really wanted to have this item on your lengthy agenda tonight just to call out a really great partnership here to support the construction of our police and public works campus. And so the action in front of you tonight is to receive a land donation from Flint Hills Resources to facilitate the construction of the police and public works facility. And so just to give folks at home maybe a bit of background on this project or what's in front of the city council tonight, the city council, or the city, has received the 20-acre parcel at Biscayne Avenue upon which the police and public works campus sits. We'll be receiving that property from the National Guard and the state of Minnesota at no cost. That's a significant cost savings to the city. Using generally kind of, estimated real estate transaction figures on a 20-acre parcel, that's probably a $1.5 to $2 million cost savings to the project. And so, as we discussed earlier, it's not a small project, not a cheap project, but to save $2 million in land cost is a really big deal. And so, to get that deal through with the National Guard, their kind of mission and philosophy is that they cannot forego or lose acreage in the Twin Cities metropolitan region, just because that is where the majority of their soldiers and their folks come from. They want to doubly invest kind of in armories and locations inside of the Twin Cities. And so they said that they would be willing to give us the property on Biscayne, north of their maintenance facility, if we could find them a replacement 20 acres of property. And so we don't sit on 20 acres all the time. We don't have a bank of acreage, and so we went to our partners at Flint Hills, who do have quite a significant land holding, to see if they'd be able to find a 20-acre excess parcel for them that they'd be willing to give to the National Guard for a potential long-term use as an armory. And they were gracious enough to find a 20-acre parcel on Akron Avenue, generally speaking, north of the Flint Hills Soccer Complex. That's a nice parcel that could be built with good access someday onto Akron Avenue for I'll reiterate again, potential long-term armory. This is 30, 40, 50 years is what I've been told down the road. If they were to need a second armory in Rosemount, they just needed to have land upon which they could potentially place that. So Flint Hills is donating it to the city at no cost. We have run some title work on the property. We'll then go through the legal process to then give it to the National Guard. And then that will facilitate and complete this kind of three-way land swap. And so, again, huge thank you to the National Guard, state of Minnesota. This required legislative action, so Representative Hewitt, Senator May Quaid helped us get this to the state legislature this year. Flint Hills and all the team out there took care of their side of it, had to bring it down to Wichita to get approval down there. So a lot of time. This has been worked on since probably 2017 when I first got here. With Police Chief Mitch Scott back in the day, and so it's fun to see it come to a finish, and we really appreciate the support.
Just echoing from myself and council, thank you for staff's ability to shepherd this with our partners. Any questions or comments from the rest of council? Seeing none, would someone like to move the motion for the land donation?
I'll make a motion, excuse me, to receive a land donation from Flint Hills Resources and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute necessary agreements.
Second.
Motion by Essler, second by Klimpel. Roll, please.
Preskey?
Aye.
Essler?
Aye.
Semple?
Aye.
Weisenthal?
Aye.
Aye.
That completes 9D, 5-0. Move on to announcements. City staff updates. Mr. Mart.
Mayor, I have none tonight. I can give my time back to you.
Great.
We'll get this done before 9.
Well,
Yeah, maybe. With that, I'm going to yield the floor to council members, particularly those that had probably relatives associated with some of our local sports youth. These young men and women, I think, did an outstanding year, and I'll turn it over to whoever wants to take it first to shout
Oh,
out.
sure. Sorry if I get emotional. I don't need to. I'm gonna recognize the girls' state champs, the softball team. They had a perfect season, 26-0. They won the state tournament, and they ended up ranked 5 in the nation after the season ended. Many of the players are graduating. Many of them are going on to play D1. And then one of the Justice Snippus, one of our ace pitchers, is also the Metro Player of the Year. So this is where I get emotional, I apologize, but I've watched these girls since they were 8U growing up, and it's just been wonderful. So shout out to them. Turn it over to you and get emotional.
Let's see those tears.
No. I would just like to take this time to recognize the Rosemont boys baseball team. Came up a little short, but took second in state. First time in 15 years that the Rosemont boys baseball team has been to state. And we came up, like I said, a little short. Great baseball, 1-0. We got to play 3 games at CHS Field. And just congratulations to all the boys and all the coaches for a lot of years of being at the ballpark and having early games on weekends and to finishing second in state. It's quite a I don't know, just pretty, not quite emotional, but it's pretty cool to see all the hard work paying off. So congratulations.
Yep, and the other group of spring athletes that had an exceptional season was also the track program. Both the boys and the girls track program. On the girls side, they got 3rd place in state in the true team meet. And on the boys side, they got second, slight second by 5.5 points behind Wayzata in the true team on the boys side, and then the Minnesota State High School League track meet, they were the state champs. Yeah. So once again, the track program continues to excel and do amazing things, and this year was no different. So
We wanted to call out one of the.
Oh yeah, and one of the competitors on the boys side, Hayden Bills, was announced to be the state of Minnesota boys track and field athlete of the year. So just an incredible year and career for Hayden Bills.
Just a great shout out to the youth of our community, our local school here in Rosemont. We'll appreciate the time and effort that both the young men and women put into, as well as their parents, coaches, everyone that stands behind them for their success. Reflects really well on Rosemont and gives us that hometown feel, particularly when they're state champions. So,
right on.
With that, we'll move to the upcoming community calendar. See if I can get through this fairly well. So I did have one question on farmers market. Is there truly one on the 4th? Yes. Okay. All right, so coming up here on, it'll be on multiple Thursdays. The first one here this week is June 22nd, also the 29th, and July 6th, I believe, is Kids Music in the Park, running from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. Central Park. On June 26th, we'll have the Park and Rec regular meeting from 7 to 8 here at City Hall. The Planning Commission is on June 27th from 6:30 to 7:30 here at City Hall. The Public Safety in the Park, June 29th from 5 to 8 p.m. at Central Park. As part of this week and through through June 25th, we have the Art Blast activities happening within the city, various places, Steeple Center, Central Park, Go out to rosemontarts.com/artblast2023 for a full listing of those. City offices will be closed for Independence Day on July 4th. Utility Commission regular meeting has been moved to July 10th, from 5:30 to 6:30. And following up on our next get-together, joint City Council and Planning Commission work session will be on July 11th from 5 to 6 p.m. And our next City Council meeting has been moved to July 11th, 2023 from 7 to 8 due to the 4th of July holidays. And with that, if there's no other business to come before council, I move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.